Now we see what a hugely important element wine tourism is to most every wine estate in Italy. It's important, but it wasn't even really thought of much in the 1990s. So you really were a pioneer in this.
Yes, you're right. So at that moment, the wine tourism was in no even embryonal state. People did only tasting as accessories experience during their holiday for other reasons. The first 3 or 4 years, I only had families from Germany and from Holland who followed me, driving my Alfa Romeo into the wineries and tasting with me one olive oil and two wines, and I got paid 35,000 lira for 3 hours to be with them. So it was quite challenging. And the first 3 or 4 years, no profit, a lot of fun, but I start to develop my knowledge about wine as well.
Fascinating people with stories to share, fabulous wines and the best local foods to accompany them, and beautiful places to discover and visit. All of this and more on Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast. Join me for a new episode every Tuesday. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel to Tuscany, to the island of Elba, to meet my guest, Filippo Magnani, fellow member of the Circle of Wine Writers, wine writer and founder and owner of Fufluns, a wine travel concierge customized in wine tours all throughout Italy for both professionals and wine enthusiasts. Many thanks for being my guest today, Filippo. How are you, and is it a beautiful day in Elba?
Yes, ciao, Mark. Of course, it's my pleasure, and I'm delighted to chat with you from this beautiful island where Napoleon was exiled. Yes.
You spend your summers with your family there, or parts of your time when you're not working, is that right?
Well, I would say I enjoy a little bit the seaside, but I work intensively even in summer because we are planning, first due to my writing, but also we are planning with my team in my village in Suvereto on the coast, which is 1 hour away from the island with the ferry that cross the Mediterranean Sea. So we are planning, the next tours in the fall between October, November, and of course next year as well, because people who are traveling for wine sometimes they plan ahead at least 1, 8, 9 months ahead their itineraries, their programs. Yes.
Okay, yes, I can well understand that. And those are good times to be traveling,
Yes.
the autumn months as well. Now, Filippo, before we learn more about
Mhm.
Fufluns and your activities, share with us, our listeners, a little bit about yourself. You said that you're from Suvereto, a beautiful medieval town I recall visiting in the Maremma in southern Tuscany. Tell us about Suvereto and about you and how you became a specialist in wine.
Well, yeah, I'm very proud to say I am from there because Suvereto is very small hamlet on the coast, in front of the island of Elba, and I grew there. I start, be in touch with the wine since I was 4 or 5 years old because my father owned a little vineyards close by to Tuarita winery at that time, and I had always attractive to travel. So after my graduation at the high school nearby Suvereto, I moved to Florence. I started to study economics of tourism at the University of Florence, and then I started to travel and work abroad. So I work in France, in Spain, in Germany, learning German, and then I moved to US in Seattle in 1994, right before my graduation. There, beautiful American lady, she brought me for a weekend down to Napa Valley, where I saw so many activities around wine tourism, wine tasting. People at that time, we are talking about 1994, 1995, I will remember, they were already traveling extensively through Napa Valley and Sonoma, visiting wineries. And so I got the idea to come back, graduated the hotel and tourism management in Florence, and finally start to build up the idea of a new company specializing on wine tours. That's why in 1999 I start to create my baby, Fufluns. Fufluns is a travel concierge company specialized only and exclusively in wine tours in Italy.
That's really interesting. And I like the way you're linking that back to the early 1990s because
Mhm.
my book, The Wine Roads of Italy, was published in 1991. So it was a time when wine tourism in Italy and wine hospitality was very far from being developed. When you founded Fufluns in 1999, you were a real pioneer in offering, I guess, both to the clients, but also to the wine estates, the winery, some very small, the possibility and the potential for what wine tourism could develop. And now we see what a hugely important element it is to most every wine estate in Italy. It's important, but it wasn't even really thought of much in the 1990s. So you really were a pioneer in this.
Yes, you're right. I tried to do my best and I really struggled the first 3 or 4 years for a few reasons. First of all, I didn't have so much knowledge and experience about wine. Secondly, I didn't know so much about the territories or wine destinations, not only in my area in Maremma, but also all through Tuscan hills and eventually outside of Tuscany, regions like Piedmont, Veneto, or for example, in the south of Italy. So I had no idea. Thirdly, I didn't have a clients because, as you said, the travelers, especially international travelers who came to Italy to visit, to make their holidays, they exclusively come for the beauty of the towns, Florence, Roma, Venice, so for the monuments, for the history of Italy. Certain of them for the seaside, so for the summer holidays. Only few of them they participate or they wanted to go visit in the countryside, to go visit in the wineries. So at that moment the wine tourism was in its embryonal, not even embryonal state. People did only tasting as accessories, experience during their holiday for other reasons.
Yes, yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
It was really, hard for me to get clients. I still remember this is a very funny story. The first 3 years, I started to deliver my brochures of wine tours, at least 3 hours with me, following me with my Alfa Romeo in the countryside. So at the first 3 or 4 years, I only had families from Germany and from Holland who followed me, driving my Alfa Romeo into the wineries and tasting with me one olive oil and two wines. And I got paid 35,000 lira for 3 hours to be with them. So it was quite challenging. And the first 3 or 4 years, no profit, a lot of fun, but I start to develop my knowledge about wine as well.
Of course. And just for our listeners who may not recall, 35,000 lire was about 17 pounds. Is that right? It was about
Yes,
2,000 to the pound, as I recall. And I'm not sure what that would be in the dollar in those days, but it sounds a lot of money, 35,000 liras, but it was very little for what you were doing.
absolutely.
That's amazing. And, as I say, we were doing something similar, with the Wine Roads books that
Yeah.
my wife and I were producing. But it was also very exciting because, Italian wine estates or Italian families, Italian people would be so welcoming. And it was such a wonderful way to explore and discover Italy beyond, as you say, the monuments and the art and the cities, but linking that with gastronomy. And I know that's something you are very involved in. So can you say really how wine tourism has evolved over the past 25 years? It's been a profound evolution, and there's very, very highly developed and sophisticated wine experiences which you offer, but also still very simple and rewarding ones.
Absolutely. In fact, this is linked to my fourth point of your previous question. I had no idea, or I had really few experience to offer to my clients because at that time, during the 90s, early 90s, only few wineries they were ready to welcome visitors at the estate. So they were not ready for training their employees. They were not ready for going through the vineyards before the tasting or before the visit. They had only few of them. The big wineries only they had their tasting rooms with different packages to offer in terms of tasting meals and events at the wineries. So step by step, due to the fact that the wine tourism was very promoted by the Italian, wine industry first, the tourism sector, and so on one side. On the other side, a lot of wine courses, like WSET courses, sommelier courses here in Italy, they were very popular and they are still very popular. So the basin of wine travelers or wine connoisseurs or the early drinker, they start to increase step by step tremendously on one side. So the demand of wine traveling is start to be very high during the early 2000, 2001, 2003, and then 2005. On the other side, a lot of estates have been aware about the benefit of welcoming people at the property. And so, not only in terms of marketing, promotion, and advertisement, but also for direct sale of wine. So, wine sold at the wineries directly to the visitors, to the guests. So, they started to invest a massive money for creating the most beautiful or the most organized ambience for the clientele. So now, from Subtirol, Alto Adige, in the Dolomites, until Pantelleria, Italy is capable to offer a wide range of small wineries, biodynamic, organic, small vigneron on one side, big high-tech architectural estate all over Italy, which are very like a temple for wine lovers to visit. On one side, there are many agriturismo or wineries. They have been transformed in a wine resort, the so-called wine retreat, with a lot of cottages, a lot of rooms overviewing the beautiful rolling hills of Barolo, the beautiful sweet hills of Chianti and Brunello di Montalcino, toward the south, where you can really mix the food, the Italian culture with in a beautiful state in Puglia, for example, or in Sicily, overlooking Etna and the beautiful Taormina. So Italy today, it becomes a very important, probably I would say one of the leading destinations all over the boots, which is capable to satisfy all needs and all requests of all different segments of wine travelers.
Yeah, that's a very good overview. And I just want to emphasize to our listeners how you are highlighting the availability and the beauty and the difference between the north, the Dolomites, Trentino Alto Adige, right through central Italy, northwest, northeast, in Friuli
Yeah,
Venezia Giulia, across the central Italy, Tuscany and Umbria, and down into the south, and even not only across Sicily, but to the tiny island of Pantelleria, a volcanic island that's closer to northern Africa
absolutely.
than even to mainland Sicily. So it is extraordinary. And it has been a transformation within this period that you've been working. And as you say, it's required a great amount of investment, but also a commitment, I think, on the part of people working in wine to realize that this is fundamental for not only allowing people to discover those wines, but for direct sales, which is a very important element. What would you say that your clients, and I'm talking not about perhaps the professional bespoke tours you do, but your clients, the wine enthusiasts that are coming to you from all over the world. And I think that your clients, Filippo, are probably very similar to the listeners of my show now. What are people looking for when they come to you or when they come to Italy to visit a wine area or a region? What are the most fundamental things?
Oh, this is a very, very nice question. You're right. Of course, the main actor is a wine. The wine and the experience that people can live during a wine tours is the most important things for them. So, at the moment, I think they always try to find two different sides of the wine production, of the wine tourism. One, they always want to visit the premium, fine, important wineries all over Italy, in Tuscany, in Piedmont, but also now they start to require the Sicily, for example, Campania. So they want to have the big names, the names which are very famous globally all over the world. Aside of those big names, they want to discover also, in terms of wine, the new rising stars of, I call them the wine gem, The wine gem can be a medium-sized family which start to get some rates from different wine magazines, but it's not very, very famous yet as the previous group. And then, of course, they want to be welcome to those Italian family during a wine tasting in their home, in their garage, in their cellars. But they want to feel at home with those 2 hectares wineries and be involved in this so-called Italian way of life. And so I think this is a mix always between big, medium, and small wineries, international or more local, global versus local versus authentic. So at the end, I think what is the key point of those tours is, of course, wine, but try to, we always try to mix the first actors, wineries, with our Italian hospitality, our Italian way of life or lifestyle, as everybody says, because I think it's one of the unique things that we can offer from our country.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Now, Filippo, keeping to that then, gastronomy is obviously
Mhm.
central to that Italian way of life, to why all of us love Italy and travel to Italy for the wine, but the wine linked with the foods. How important is that for your clients and for what you're offering?
Well, actually, is one of the most important challenge for me during, let's take a group of a wine club which goes with us for 4 or 5 days. Imagine I have to match and to differentiate every single menu that they experience at the wineries or in a Michelin star restaurant or in the osteria, so Italian family restaurant, during 5 days. I always try to match and to give them a range of menu, of ingredients, of experience differently. And so this is very attractive to them because they can experience one day the ravioli stuffed with spinach and ricotta. The day after, they can have minestra with the farro, so the cereal, Tuscany cereal soup, or they can have ribollita, so a more vegetarian style one day of menu. Another day, the so-called the steak bone, the meat, and the meaty gamey with a lot of wild boar mixed with bold red wines. Going to the south on the coast, we can miss whites, the Italian whites, and fish. So Italy propose a lot of delights, gastronomic delights, again over the old boots. So it's challenging, but also beauty to discover, to let the guests to discover this beauty, this delicatesse that are not so easy to find sometime in their countries. So it's a little bit like a wine, behind the big brands, the Parmigiano Reggiano, the Parma ham, I don't know, the balsamic vinegar from Modena, we always try to expose our client to the hidden products, the hidden gems of Italy. So this is a little bit challenging, but very satisfying as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And of course, Italy is the greatest country in the world for finding not only the precise local wine, which is only found in a particular area, but also foods that pair with it, that foods that change from place to place. For example, pici and pinci.
Yeah.
And there's subtle differences. but nonetheless important. Just to give our listeners and me an idea of how your tours work, Filippo, take us not to Tuscany, which is your home region and which many people have visited, but let's go to maybe one of your southern tours and just tell us some highlights from your either your Campania or Basilicata region. I know is very little visited, but I would like to encourage more people to go to Basilicata.
Oh, absolutely. In the past, I said because my client is very diversified. I have individual clients, three or four people, six people, maybe some friends, but also mainly wine clubs and wine companions, like 10, 12 people, sometimes 15. In the last 3 or 4 years, I developed an itinerary which is fantastic. We land or we meet, we regroup the people in Naples. In Naples, 2 nights in Naples, visiting the theater of Naples, eventually to participate to the opera of Teatro San Carlo in the center of Naples, to do a little bit of pizza class, for example, as a kickoff from the tour in Naples. And is a beautiful city that has been restored, renewed in the center. Then from Naples, of course, we visit going toward to the Amalfi Coast. We stop in Pompeii, guided visit Pompeii. We turn a little bit up down to the coast in the Amalfi Coast, visiting a few wineries which are producing fantastic wine with a great view toward Capri and the beautiful other islands. We turn back into the mainland between Tufo, Lapio, and Taurasi. So here we start to approach to go deeper and deeper into the wine world of wine of Campania, comparing the reds of Taurasi toward the whites in the mountains of Lapio and Tufo with a beautiful, Fiano and Greco. So we always try to compare white and reds, big winery and small wineries, modern and authentic and ancient. And of course, during this program, we go through Basilicata, stopping in the Aglianico del Volture, which is another, hidden destination with a beautiful and untouched beauty, natural beauty, very attentive because the mass tourism has not arrived yet there, and we end up in Matera. So the beauty, the UNESCO site, the UNESCO town. So during this trip, which probably accounts in between, it accounts in between 7 and 10 days sometime. We first visit Campania, we move on to Basilicata, and we end up in Bari through Matera with Puglia. So during 10 days, people they can really appreciate different style of wines, different grapes, native and international varieties, and different style of wineries. So it's a beautiful experience, I would say.
That sounds an amazing tour that really gives an overview from the coast, from the beautiful Amalfi Coast that people know, but going into Irpinia and discovering this inland Campania and then down into Basilicata, which, as I say, is one of the most fascinating regions. And Puglia, of course, on the Adriatic, the heel of the boot of Italy. Again, wonderful wines, wonderful foods. What would be some of the food and wine highlights on that southern tour, Filippo?
Well, of course, in Irpinia, it's quite interesting because Irpinia is still being in Campania. People think about Campania about only Naples and, or predominantly about Naples and Amalfi Coast, so the seaside. So with more fish, more light. Extra virgin recipes made on extra virgins, tomato, and fresh fish with whites, like Fiano. I think Fiano became more and more popular all over the world as the flagship grapes of Campania, like Sangiovese in Tuscany or like Nebbiolo in Piedmont. So, and going in the heart of Irpinia, you find a beautiful hilly, mounty destination where you can appreciate white Fiano with a little bit more spicy, more, cheesy, but also hammy, ham and salami, but also combine a lot of reds of Taurasi, which is not so far from the Lapio or Tufo, and having this with a beautiful, filet mignon or natural breeding farming lamb, for example.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's easy to think, for us to think of the South as a homogeneous area where the sun is always shining. But inland Campania, and certainly on Voltere, ancient volcano of Voltere, the climate can be quite severe. It can be, I
Yeah.
recall visiting Voltere in November one year, and it was bitterly cold.
Yeah.
And of course, the grape harvests in both Irpini and Taurasi and for the Aglianico del Voltere are often happen even with climate change as late as November. So
Yeah.
it's not the case that the South is one homogeneous area. And that's the beauty of it. As you point out as well, Filippo, unique native grape varieties that are found in different areas that you really need to travel sometimes to experience because they're not yet well known, which means they're not yet well exported. And the best way to discover them is on a tour such as you've described. Filippo, since you've been working in the field of Italian wine, and we're just talking about maybe over the last 25 years, 30 years, there's been an incredible renaissance of Italian wine. Like the renaissance that began in the Cinquecento, it started in Tuscany, didn't it?
Yeah.
And a revolution in wine, but it's now spread throughout the country in every single one of Italy's 20 regions. What are some of the most exciting things in the world of Italian wine that you've experienced yourself over the past 3 decades, the changes that have taken place? Because it's been quite profound.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. What is the strength today, from my point of view, of Italy? We have the dichotomy of proposing to the global world of wine two different approaches in general of wine production. One more international and one more local. So global versus local again, which is also a little bit of my mission during my wine travel proposal. So what does it mean? Due to the trend which became popular from Tuscany and from Piedmont mainly during the end of 80s, beginning of 90s, due to the so-called super Tuscans, the diffusion of the international grapes all over Italy became very popular. Today you can find Merlot, Cabernet as a reds, but also Pinots, so Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay all over Italy. So basically, we are ready or we are capable to propose to the new market, especially those wines made of course, in a different way from other countries, in a different way from region to region, but still an international approach. On the other side, with the knowledge of the international knowledge, the wine courses, the wine education, the wine educator, the wine ambassador that have been trained by the consortium, by the Italian government, or I would say the Italian wine bodies or wine industry all over the years. A new feeling, a new approach it became more and more important, increasingly his power all over the world. What is this? Is the challenging but also fascinating proposal of the rediscovering of Italian grapes, or the Italian native varieties. Everybody talks about it, but I honestly and sincerely I can see during my tours. During my tours, I receive more and more people who have been reading about Vitosca from Carso in Friuli Venezia Giulia, from Nerello Cappuccio, Nerello Mascarese from Etna in Sicily, from beside the big boys like Sangiovese and Nebbiolo, but also a little grapes and famous from Campania, from Abruzzo, and so on. Everybody wants to go behind those international grapes, behind those famous brands made with the flagship Italian grapes. So there is a very big potential for Italy, still, I would say, still undiscovered, that it can be very profitable for everybody, from the wine tourism to the wine production in the future. So this is what I think, ecco.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's been such a wealth of interest in understanding. I mean, Italy's a difficult. You've written about many different wine from other countries. I have too. Italy is difficult because of this wealth of native grape varieties, but not just that. The fact that so many of them remain local, Filippo, that you
Yes,
don't
yes,
really encounter them unless you travel there. But it's such a joy to discover these wines. And I'm
absolutely.
sure that that is, one of the appeals and also one of the challenges because it's not easy
No,
internationally to sell wines made from grapes nobody's heard of. It's easier to sell a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc or a
exactly.
Cabernet. But the beauty of Italy is this great wealth. And as you say, there are a number of opportunities for learning. I will mention the Vinitaly International Academy and its program of Italian wine ambassadors as a way of really diffusing knowledge around the world with Italian wine ambassadors now all around the world. Filippo, I just want to finally turn to some of the challenges for the future. And I know there are many challenges that Italian wine industry is facing, but there are many challenges that we're all as humanity are facing. I'm particularly thinking about climate change and the effect on wine. But some of these challenges, and how do you think Italy is going to be able to cope with them? What do you think some of the main challenges are for now and for the future?
Well, if I have to look at, everybody's talking about climate change, I would leave this contest more to the technical, wine producer who are capable, I would say, to manage, or at least they try to manage these kind of difficulties now and in the future. And I think they will succeed in certain cases. From my point of view, on my side, on the other side, I can talk about wine tourism. The wine tourism is on one side, of course, as tourism in general is facing the actual problem that we have in terms of war, international war, or also the fluctuation of the economy. But the wine tourism precisely has a lot of potential again, especially in Italy, because we are not yet well positioned, for example, in Asia, in China, in India, and those people. They are ready to travel extensively in Europe, but also specifically in Italy, because they are feeling very close to our culture, to our way of welcoming people. So I think on one side we struggle like all other countries, especially in Europe, for these kind of global difficulties for traveling. But on the other side, we have a great potential to look at new countries on one side, especially in Asia, to Asia, but also countries which have been always in love with Italy, like USA, like Canada, like North Europe, which are ready again to deep their knowledge, their roots in Italian wine heritage.
Okay, well, that's a very positive outlook. Just a final advice then, Filippo, for wine lovers, and our listeners are located all around the world, those who are looking to learn more about Italian wines, of native grapes, Italian wine regions. What is your advice to them?
Of course, to participate, as you said, for professional, to participate to the courses, to the seminar, and to the courses that the Vin Italy and Vin Italy International is setting, because I've been in touch with a lot of Italian wine ambassadors recently, and of course, they know probably better than me what is the actual Italian world of wine now, because they always receive a deep studies, a deep analysis of Italy in general and also Italy in the global wine world. So this is my first advice. Second, of course, traveling through Italy by themselves, by as an organizer, not only because I am part of this field, because traveling and wine traveling give the opportunity to deep their knowledge, to deep to understand the weaknesses, of course, but also the strength and the beauty of my country. So on one side, to start to be educated from a certain bodies like Vinital International or traveling. Those are my advice.
Okay, I think that's very, very good advice. And I think inherent in everything you've said, Filippo, is most important of all is for people to enjoy, to discover Italy, Italian wines through enjoying them. And I think that's what you offer. Filippo, it's been a real pleasure meeting you here. I would have preferred to meet you over a glass of wine or two, but hopefully we can do that before too long. But thank you very much for being my guest today.
Absolutely, Mark. Enjoy your summer and everybody enjoy summers all over the world. Ciao, ciao.
Grazie, ciao, a presto. We hope today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on the Italian Wine Podcast has transported you to somewhere special. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.